Zero tolerance is generally defined as a rule-based approach that requires a predetermined consequence for every violation of a specific rule, regardless of individual circumstances, any extenuating factors, or the severity of the infraction. For example, at school, we have a zero tolerance for smoking or vaping. If you're caught, that is, proven to have a vape or cigarette and or you're observed on video using either product on school grounds, there's no discussion. You're expelled. The same is not true if you drink and drive. In most states, if your blood alcohol level measures less than 0.08%, you will not be charged with DUI. However, if you're underage, there is a zero tolerance, meaning 0% alcohol in your bloodstream. The concept of zero tolerance was developed back in the 1930s in reference to plant diseases. In 1963, the FDA applied a zero tolerance perspective to the presence of pesticides like heptachlor in foods, meaning no trace was permitted. In 1982, the broken windows theory was introduced, which linked minor disorder to larger crime. That theory was used by Mayor Rudy Giuliani during his tenure to clean up the New York City streets. His policing strategy was that any visible signs of disorder, such as graffiti, loitering, public drinking, and minor crimes, signaled a lack of community control, which could lead to more serious criminal activity. He and his police commissioner were lauded for this widely successful approach, which improved the quality of life for New York City residents. Today, tolerance is viewed almost as a virtue, as we all are told that we need to bend and shift to allow nearly any behavior. Doesn't matter if it goes against your values or even deeply held religious beliefs. You must be careful about who you criticize. You must comply with others who compel certain speech. This perspective has even changed language, giving rise to terms like pregnant people instead of mothers, or chest feeding instead of breastfeeding. We're told it isn't just impolite, but a gross form of verbal violence to use the wrong pronoun, even if the guy in a dress is sporting a beard. It's considered tolerant, even compassionate, to allow nearly any bizarre or dangerous behavior without question. Color me confused. Scholar Gad Saad refers to excessive compassion that undermines any social cohesion, values, or security as suicidal empathy. This concept, he says, describes a dangerous form of compassion without limits, where unchecked empathy can lead to unintended consequences, such as destabilizing social systems, eroding trust, and fostering resentment. Need examples? Google gang rapes in the UK for more information on how the young girls and sometimes boys who are targets of these sexual groomers are charged with soliciting, and the men are set free to do it again. In this week's Parsha Lech Lecha, we are introduced to Abraham, the man considered to be the founder of monotheistic theism. Throughout Abraham's story, we learn of his pure, unbridled, uninhibited kindness. When his herdsmen and shepherds got into quarrels with his nephew Lot's herdsmen and shepherds, Abraham suggested they split and not try to share resources. Ever the gentleman, he gave Lot first pick of the land. Lot chose the well-watered plains of Jordan all the way to the established cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, and Zoar. Abraham gave in and settled in the land of Canaan. When Lot was taken hostage during the war between the kings, Abraham risked life and limb to muster a small army to rescue him. Abraham's tent was famously open on all four sides so he could welcome and care for guests. He accepted Hagar as a mistress and potential mother for his heir at his wife Sarah's urging. When Sarah later got upset with Hagar's attitude and asked her to be put out, Abraham did as his wife suggested. He led with kindness. Do you see what I mean? The man was deservedly called righteous by God himself. He was tolerant to the max, compassionate beyond understanding. So great was Abraham that God blessed him thus. From Genesis 15:1, "Fear not, Abram, I am a shield to you. Your reward shall be very great." This blessing became a line in the Amidah, a prayer said 3 times a day that includes, "You are the sovereign who helps and saves and shields. Baruch atah Adonai, blessed are you, God, shield of Abraham." The reference to the shield of Abraham is not necessarily what you think. One Hasidic master interprets it differently. He said that God's blessing in Genesis 15 was actually God saying he was the shield to protect Abraham from himself. Therefore, the prayer in the Amidah actually means, "God, please protect us from Abraham." What? Why would God want us to be protected from Abraham? Isn't he our patriarch and an example of a righteous life? And why would God want Abraham to be protected from himself? Turns out that compassion is a wonderful thing. More compassion is even better. However, too much compassion, unbridled and uninhibited kindness, is catastrophic. If you're too kind, too nice, you find yourself tolerating things that really ought not to be tolerated. Sometimes kindness and compassion requires discipline. Without discernment, kindness becomes, in the words of Gad Saad, suicidal empathy. It sounds noble and nice to say that you accept everyone in every circumstance because you are compassionate, but in the end, this is quite short-sighted. Your compassion is easily seen as approval, and that approval can have unintended and painful consequences for you and for those around you. My sister has a friend who is kind, perhaps to a fault. She and her husband live in a beautiful home in a lovely neighborhood. One evening after supper, a disheveled man simply walked into her unlocked front door. He came into the kitchen where she was startled, but not alarmed enough to call the police. Instead, she immediately felt a wave of compassion for him. She invited him to sit down and asked if he was hungry. Her husband came into the kitchen where she was making a sandwich for the man. He too was overcome with kindness and tried to have a conversation with the man about where he had come from and what else he needed. Fortunately for both of them, the man ate his fill and walked out of the house. Consider the results if he had been armed or had robbery on his mind. Imagine the tragedy of a middle-aged couple being killed in their own home because they didn't say no to a stranger who simply walked in. What if he returns with unsavory friends now that he knows there will be no police or even resistance? Unchecked tolerance is not a good thing. If you tolerate every form of behavior, no matter how aberrant, regardless of the potential danger to you or the person you are tolerating, you are perhaps exhibiting suicidal empathy. Kindness means intervening when behavior is harmful. You don't provide drugs and needles to addicts. You don't buy or serve alcohol to alcoholics. You seek help for those enmeshed in those behaviors. Even a parent has to exercise tough love if the behavior of their child goes beyond toleration. Tolerance of mental disorders is not kind. Instead, it confirms delusions that what they are doing is okay, even if the long-term results are painful for them. The Amidah prayer, "God, please protect us from Abraham," might be read, "God, please protect us from ourselves." The desire to be unfailingly kind and tolerant of all things is a danger to us and our society. Unchecked tolerance leads to unintended and often dangerous consequences for us and society at large. Sometimes the right thing to do is to put a lid on our tolerance. Zero tolerance is why we have locks on our doors. Zero tolerance is certainly required in a number of social settings. Using discernment and emotional intelligence to put up a shield is a minimum requirement. May God protect us from ourselves. May you find the courage to put up boundaries in your life and not allow unfettered tolerance to rule how you live.